So greetings and welcome to our next reading of a Jataka Tale. This tale is entitled The Queen's Necklace or Mahasara Jataka. So as always, I invite you to just relax wherever you are. We're going to be reading this story together and we're going to be reading it as a meditative practice. So we want to really experience all the characters. We want to experience the setting. We want to experience everything that the tale has to offer. So before we get started, let's take a deep cleansing breath together, breathing in through our nostrils and exhaling through the mouth. Here we go. Nice. So that just kind of sets our intention to experience this story together. And on we go. Let's look at our characters for this story. There are a bunch of characters in this story. We have the Buddha, we have the wives of King Pasenadi, we have King Pasenadi, we have Chatapani, Venerable Ananda, we have the bhikkhus, we have the queen's attendant, also known as the girl in the story. We have the palace residents, we have the guards, the peasant or the poor man, the treasurer, the chaplain, the chief musician, the monkey, who is not to be confused with the thief or the guilty monkey, and we have the wise minister. So all of these characters are in the story. You are welcome to choose one or more, since you have a whole palette to select from here of characters. You can choose one or more of the characters, and wherever you see that character's name pop up in the story as we're reading along, then you feel free to read aloud as that character, or you can join me as the narrator and read along with the entire story. Your choice. So, beginning. It was while staying in Jetavana that the Buddha told this story about Venerable Ananda. One day, the wives of King Pasenadi were walking together. It is very rare for a Buddha to appear in the world, they said. It is also rare to be born a human being. We have been born humans during a Buddha's lifetime, but we are not free to go to the monastery to pay our respects, to hear his teaching, and to make offerings to him. We might as well be living in a cage as in this palace. Let's ask the king to allow someone to come here to teach us the Dharma. We should learn what we can, be charitable, and do good deeds. In that way, we will truly benefit from living at this happy time. They went to the king and made their request. The king listened and gave his consent. That same morning, the king decided to enjoy himself in the royal garden and ordered that it be prepared. As the gardener was finishing, he saw the Buddha seated at the foot of a tree. He immediately went to the king and reported that everything was ready, but that the Buddha was there sitting under a tree. Very good, said the king. We will go and hear the master. He mounted his chariot and went to the garden. When he got there, he found a lay disciple, Chatapani, sitting at the Buddha's feet, listening to his words. When the king saw this lay disciple, he hesitated. Realizing, however, that this must be a virtuous man, the king approached, bowed, and seated himself on one side. Out of his profound respect for the Buddha, Chatapani neither rose to honor the king nor greeted him. It made the king very angry. Aware of the king's displeasure, the Buddha praised the merits of Chatapani, who had in fact attained the third path. Sire, the Buddha said, this lay disciple knows by heart the scriptures that have been handed down, and he has set himself free from the bondage of passion. Surely, the king thought, this can be no ordinary person who is being so highly praised by the Buddha. He turned to Chatapani and said, let me know if you are in need of anything. Thank you, Chatapani replied. The king listened to the master's teaching. When it was time, he rose and left ceremoniously. A few days later, the king met Chatapani again as he was on his way to Jetavana and had him summoned. I hear, sir, that you are a man of great learning. My wives are eager to hear the truth. I would be very glad to have you teach them. It would not be proper, sire, for a layman to expound the truth in the king's harem. That is the prerogative of the bhikkhus, Chatapani responded. The king immediately realized that this was correct. So he called his wives together and announced that he would ask the Buddha for one of the senior bhikkhus to become their instructor in the Dhamma. He asked them which of the 80 great disciples they would prefer. The women unanimously chose Venerable Ananda. The king went to the Buddha, greeted him courteously, sat down, and stated his wife's wish that Venerable Ananda be their teacher. The Buddha assented, and Venerable Ananda began teaching the king's wives regularly. One day, when Venerable Ananda arrived at the palace as usual, he found that the women, who had always been so attentive, were distracted and agitated. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Why do you seem anxious today?" "Oh, venerable sir," the women replied, "the jewel from the king's turban is missing. He has called his ministers and ordered them to apprehend the thief and to find the jewel without fail. They are interrogating and searching everybody, even all of us women. The entire court is in an uproar, and we have no idea what might happen next to any of us. That is why we are so unhappy." "Don't worry," said Venerable Ananda cheerfully as he went to find the king. Taking the seat which the king prepared for him, Venerable Ananda asked whether it was true that the king had lost his jewel. "Quite true, venerable sir," said the king. "I have had everyone in the palace searched and questioned, but I can find no trace of the gem." "There is a way to find it, sire," Venerable Ananda said, "without upsetting people unnecessarily." "What way is that, venerable sir?" the king asked. "By wisp giving, sire," answered Ananda. "Wisp giving?" asked the king. "What do you mean?" "Call everyone under suspicion," Venerable Ananda instructed, "and give him or her a wisp of straw. Say to each of them, 'Take this and put it in a certain place before daybreak tomorrow.' The person who took the jewel will be afraid of getting caught and will give the gem back with the straw. If it is not returned on the first day, the same thing must be done for 1 or 2 more days. You will undoubtedly get your jewel back." Without saying anything more, Venerable Ananda departed. Following Venerable Ananda's advice, the king distributed wisps of straw and designated the place where they were to be returned. Even though he did this for 3 days, the jewel was not recovered. On the third day, Venerable Ananda came again and asked whether the jewel had been returned. "No, venerable sir," replied the king, "it has not." "In that case, sire," Venerable Ananda said, "have a large water pot filled with water and placed in a secluded corner of your courtyard. Put a screen around it and give orders that all who frequent the palace, both men and women, are to take off their outer garments and one by one to step behind the screen and to wash their hands." Again, the king did exactly as Venerable Ananda had suggested. Venerable Ananda has seriously taken charge of the matter, thought the thief. He is not going to stop until the jewel is found. The time has come to give it up. He concealed the jewel in his underclothes, went behind the screen, and dropped it in the water. After everyone had finished, the pot was emptied and the jewel was found. "Because of Venerable Ananda," exclaimed all the residents of the palace, "we have been saved from a lot of trouble." The story of how his wisdom had returned the jewel spread throughout the city and reached Jetavana. A few days later, while the bhikkhus were talking together in the Hall of Truth, one of them said, "The great wisdom of Ananda led to recovering the lost jewel and restoring calm to the palace." When the Buddha heard what they were discussing, he said, "Bhikkhus, this is not the first time that stolen gems have been found, nor is Ananda the only one who has brought about such a discovery. Long ago, too, the wise and good discovered stolen valuables and saved a lot of people from trouble." Then he told them this story of the past. Long, long ago, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Varanasi, the Bodhisattva completed his education and became one of the king's ministers. One day, the king went with a large retinue to his pleasure garden. After walking about the woods for a while, he decided to enjoy himself in the water and sent for his harem. The women removed their jewels and outer garments, laid them in boxes for their attendants to look after, and joined the king in the royal tank. As the queen was taking off her jewels and ornaments, a female monkey hiding in the branches of a nearby tree watched her intently. The monkey conceived a longing to wear the queen's pearl necklace and waited for a chance to snatch it. At first, the queen's attendants stayed alert, looking all around to protect the jewels, but after a while, she began to nod. As soon as the monkey saw this, she jumped down as swift as the wind. Then, just as swiftly, she leaped up into the tree with the pearls around her neck. Fearing that other monkeys would see her treasure, she hid the string of pearls in a hole in the tree and sat demurely keeping guard as though nothing had happened. By and by, the girl awoke and saw that the jewels were gone. Terrified at her own negligence, she shouted, "A man has run off with the queen's pearl necklace." Sentries ran up from every side and questioned her. The king ordered his guards to catch the thief, and they rushed around the pleasure garden, searching high and low. A poor, timid peasant who happened to be nearby became frightened when he heard the uproar and started to run away. "There he goes," cried the guards. They chased the poor man, caught him, began beating him, and asked why he stole the precious jewels. The peasant thought, "If I deny the charge, these brutes will beat me to death. I better say I took them." He immediately confessed to the theft and was hauled off in chains to the king. "Did you take those precious jewels?" asked the king. "Yes, your majesty." "Where are they now?" "Your majesty, I'm a poor man," the peasant explained. "I've never owned anything of any value, not even a bed or a chair, much less a jewel. It was the treasurer who made me take that expensive necklace. I took it and gave it to him. He knows all about it." The king summoned the treasurer and asked whether the peasant had given the necklace to him. Also afraid to deny the charge, the treasurer answered, "Yes, sire." "Where is it then?" the king asked. "I gave it to the chaplain," he answered. The chaplain was summoned and interrogated in the same way. He said he had given it to the chief musician, who in his turn said he had given it as a present to a courtesan. The courtesan, however, utterly denied having received it, and the questioning continued until sunset. "It's too late now," said the king. "We will look into this tomorrow." He handed the suspects over to his officers and went back to the city. The king's wise minister began thinking. These jewels were lost inside the grounds, but the peasant was outside. There was a strong guard at the gate. It would have been impossible for anyone inside to have gotten away with the necklace. I don't see how a person inside or out could have stolen it. I don't believe that any of these five had anything to do with it, but I understand why they falsely confessed and implicated the others. As for the necklace, these grounds are swarming with monkeys. It must have been one of the female monkeys that took it. The minister went to the king and requested that the suspects be handed over to him so that he could look into the matter personally. The minister ordered his servants to take charge of the five prisoners. "Keep strict watch over them," he said. "I want you to listen to everything they say and to report it all to me." As the prisoners sat together, the treasurer said to the peasant, "Tell me, you wretch, where you and I have ever met before today. How could you have given me that necklace?" "Honorable sir," said the peasant, "I have never owned anything valuable. Even the stool and the cot I have are rickety. I said what I did because I thought with your help, I would get out of this trouble. Please don't be angry with me, sir." "Well, then," the chaplain indignantly asked the treasurer, "how did you pass on to me what this fellow never gave to you?" "I said that," explained the treasurer, "because I thought you and I, both being high ranking officials, would be able to get out of trouble together." "Brahmin," the chief musician asked the chaplain, "when do you think you gave the jewel to me?" "I only said I did," answered the chaplain, "because I thought you would help to make the time in prison pass more agreeably." Finally, the courtesan explained, "You wretch of a musician, you have never visited me and I have never visited you. When could you have given me the necklace?" "Don't be angry, my dear," said the musician. "I just wanted you to be here to keep us company. Cheer up. Let's all be lighthearted together for a while." As soon as the servants had reported this conversation, the minister knew that all his suspicions were correct. He was convinced that a female monkey had taken the necklace. Now I must find a way to make her drop it, he said to himself. He ordered his servants to catch some monkeys, to deck them out with strings of beads, and to release them again in the pleasure garden. The servants were to watch every monkey in the grounds. When they saw one wearing the missing pearl necklace, they were to frighten her into dropping it. The monkeys strutted about with their beads strung around their necks, their wrists, and their ankles. They flaunted their splendor in front of the guilty monkey who sat quietly guarding her treasure. At last, jealousy overcame her prudence. "Those are only beads," she screeched, and foolishly put on her own necklace of real pearls. As soon as the servants saw this, they began making loud noises and throwing things at her. The monkey became so frightened that she dropped the necklace and scampered away. The servants quickly retrieved the necklace and took it to their master. The minister immediately took it to the king. "Here, sire," he said, "is the queen's necklace. The 5 prisoners are innocent. It was a female monkey in the pleasure garden that took it." "Wonderful," exclaimed the king. "But tell me, how did you find that out? And how did you manage to get it back?" "We had heard the whole story," the king praised his minister and exclaimed, "You certainly," when he had heard the whole story, the king praised his minister and exclaimed, "You certainly are the right man in the right place." In appreciation, he showered the minister with immeasurable treasure. The king continued to follow the wise minister's advice and counsel. After a long life of generosity and meritorious acts, he passed away to fare according to his deserts. Having concluded his story, the Buddha again praised Venerable Ananda's merits. Then the Buddha identified the birth. At that time, Ananda was the king, and I was his wise minister. As always, let's take a deep breath to just extend any benefit that we may have acquired as a reading of this story. We send those benefits out to anyone who either joined us in reading the tale, within the hearing of the tale, or just wherever folks may be, that they also receive some joy in the way that hopefully this story brought to each and every one of us. So we're just going to take another deep breath and release it. I invite you to go back into the story at your own leisure and see if in a meditative approach, in a meditative practice, if you could even draw out of the story just any moments that speak to you, that speak to your practice of reading or your practice of meditation, and whatever that little kernel is, whether it be the jealousy exhibited by the monkey who had actually stolen the gem. It wasn't enough for her to have the precious jewel. She had to make sure everybody else knew that she had these precious jewels. It could be that. It could be that idea of jealousy. It could be the idea of those 5 folks who, instead of speaking the truth, speaking their truth, they tried to make the situation better by, in fact, making the situation worse for themselves. Whatever that might represent for you in your walk, in your spiritual path, pull that gem out of the story and sit with it, meditate with it. And I look forward to seeing you again soon for the next reading of a Jataka Tale. Be well.